Okay, welcome everybody. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. We're doing chapter 29, and we're up to number 5. Perek Chavtes, Sif Hay. So chapter 29, the paragraph 5, and we're discussing the way to behave. I guess how to work on ourselves and try and make ourselves moral and ethical, and as well as we can. The best person, the best Jew, the best human being that we can be. And so one of the principles that we've said, one of the fundamental principles is that except for a few exceptions, like conceitedness or anger, which we should try and avoid totally, but everything else we try and have a middle of the road. Not to be too extreme one way or another, but to have a balance. And that's the best way to do it. So hey, number 5, a person should always try to cultivate silence. Now, again, we're talking about middle of the road here. It doesn't mean that a person, should take a vow of silence. That's not, it's not a Jewish idea. If Hashem wanted people, again, we're not criticizing other cultures who do this. They don't need to keep Torah, only the 7 mitzvahs on the descendant of Noach. And it could be if someone sits in a monastery somewhere meditating while keeping a vow of silence, that's helping them keep the 7 mitzvahs of Noach, and so be it. But for Jewish people, one of the things that we learn in Shavuos is that we need to interact with the world. Our mission is to elevate the physical world, and therefore part of that is speaking. Even when we learn Torah, ideally, a person should speak. When it's a shiur like this, everyone fulfills the obligation by listening to the other person speak. But if you're learning individually, it shouldn't just be that you read, you should actually say the words that you read. Yes, David.
When we're trying to figure out why Medaber and Midbar are the same letters.
Right, you're asking or you're saying?
No, I'm saying
you want to know why? Well,
like
that's why. It's exactly for the.
But Midbar is in the desert.
That's
so
right.
Why is the desert?
It's actually connected. It's the hint of this very thing. Why does it say the Torah is given Midbar Sinai? The Sinai wasn't its own wilderness; it was part of the general wilderness. Just in the whole desert, there was an area or a region called Sinai. So it doesn't make sense to even say that the Yidden came to Midbar Sinai. They were already in the Midbar. Just say they came to Sinai. But this is the whole purpose, to show that it was that it was spoken. So the Beis Aaron, he was one of the descendants, one of the students of the Maggid Mezrich, Aaron Kalina. Maybe not. There was 2 Aarons of Kalin. This might have been the grandson, actually, the grandson of the student. Anyway, I think this is sort of Aaron Kalina II. He points out that we see that the Torah was given with fire. There was the smoke and everything. There was an aspect of water that we see in the air that was there, was the thunder and lightning, various things, and there was a voice, and that was dibur. And speech actually includes both, because when a person speaks, there's the warmth, there's the fire from the soul, there's a certain moisture there's in the breath, and there's the speaking, and that's all hinted in the word Bamidbar. So that is a connection to show it's actually not just a superficial connection. It's actually showing that this is the case, that it came through speech.
So what would it say that again, like in just like one sentence or 2 sentences?
So the bottom line is that the Torah was given through speech, and that's why we have the emphasis on the fact it was the Midbar Sinai, and it says often at the beginning of Sefer Midbar, Hashem spoke to Moshe B'Midbar, in the Midbar, right? And all these things to show there was this concept of speech, which includes Eish, Maim, Ruach, the fire, the liquid, and the wind, the spirit, want to say, of spirituality. And so it's not just that they related words; it's deliberately related to show this this concept. So, as I was saying, so for if Hashem wanted Jews just to sit in a monastery with a vow of silence and meditate, we did not need to create a physical world with physical bodies that have physical needs. Hashem could have just left our souls in a spiritual realm, and that's what we do. The fact that we are enclosed in an animal soul and a physical body in a physical world is because our goal is to elevate the physical world and to take a physical world where godliness is so concealed that a person could, and unfortunately many do, make the mistake to say there is no God, in such a place to reveal there is a God, to make spiritual decisions, to do spiritual things. So we need to speak. The problem is, if you look at society, and today, I'm not sure today is unique in history, but today, the way it's expressed is unique. Today, there's no secrets anymore. People are putting on social media videos of themselves saying things that in the past was only shared with your family, with the most people you have the most intimate relationships with, and now they're saying things. Yeah, right. Yeah, and maybe not even if they're saying the most. So when we say that we're in Perikov Tes Sif Haywood, chapter 29, number 5, that we should cultivate silence. We don't mean the person should have a vow of silence. What we mean is a person should have a certain discernment about when to speak and what to speak about. Because human nature is just to lobble anything, the first thing comes to your mind. So the Kotzker said, he says, not everything you think needs to be said. And not everything that's said you have to listen to. Not everything you hear you have to repeat. Not everything that's repeated has to be written down. And not everything that's written down has to be read. Right? Or maybe it started with what you read. It started with one of them and it goes around the circle. Right? And not everything you read you have to think about. So that is the point. So
and you don't have to act on it. You still got a couple
right.
till you get to act on it.
That's right. So there is a time to speak. As a matter of fact, speaking is a part of Judaism. When you daven, you have to say the words. When you learn, ideally, you should say the words. Again, we learn a group share. If we all speak, then it's going to disturb everyone. But the same way, when one person makes kiddush for many people, and you feel the obligation of saying kiddush while listening. So in a group share, you fulfill your obligation of saying the words of Torah by listening. But everything that we do requires a level of speaking. You can't have a relationship without speaking. So when we say that we cultivate silence, it doesn't mean to never speak. What it means is to know when to speak, and when to speak, what to say, and at other times you don't need to say anything. So many people fall into the trap of gossip or sharing things about themselves or others that they shouldn't do, just because they feel they need to speak. There's this fear of what many people feel is an awkward silence. In a healthy relationship, two people can sit. They don't have to speak every minute. Doesn't mean you're always sitting in silence, right? If they're always sitting in silence, it's also not a healthy relationship. But many people can just enjoy each other's company, and there doesn't have to be constant speaking. So, which in other words, when do we speak? What should we speak out? Words of Torah. Now, words of Torah is a very general term. It doesn't only mean literally saying words of Torah, but anything that's going to enhance your spiritual growth. So you could be speaking to someone about an idea. You could be asking questions about how to work on yourself. But any speech that's going to improve you as a person, as a Jew, improve your spirituality, that we should speak. Oi, what's the other thing we need to do? The varmshut harachai gufay, things that are needed for the life of your body. So there's many things we have to speak about with health. We have to, part of our health is also emotional health. So we need to interact with people in a positive way. So these are the general categories. It includes a lot of things. Now, even things you need for your body, you shouldn't speak excessively. So yes, whatever we need to discuss with someone, we need to discuss. There are times where for our health, we have to get things off our chest, as long as it's the right time, it's the right person, the right environment. There are a lot of things we have to talk about, but it shouldn't be excessive. And our sages have already said, someone who just talks excessively, they talk for the sake of speaking, it leads them to hate. Now, again, I don't like to use the word sin. It's like a very Christian word, but in other words, it leads to spiritual downfall. Either they're going to say something they shouldn't say, they're going to say something to someone they shouldn't say it to, if it's the right thing to say, or it's just going to lead them to other things. And they say, right, so we see it's in actually Pirkei Avos, right, that there's nothing better for a person than silence. There are so many times, and again, obviously, that doesn't mean all the time, but so often, person can benefit from just listening. Person can benefit from just having moments of silence, be able to contemplate and to think. We've almost lost the concept of downtime in society between cell phones and the various things. We have all these appliances. You look at how people, let's say they lived, let's say 200 years ago, less even, but just use an example. And they had to chop the wood for fuel, and they had to schlep the water, and they, had to kindle a fire to be able to cook. If you think all the appliances that we have, all the extra time we should have on our hands to be able to work on spiritual growth, we see on the contrary, we actually are busier today than we've ever been. Every device that was created to give us more time is actually now taking up more of our time. Nachman, the rest of the one said that a man who doesn't have, in this case, by man, we mean a human being, who doesn't have 1 hour a day just to stop and think, is not a man. They're not a human being. How many of us have an hour every day just to stop and think? And this is this idea of shtika. We just pause, press the pause button, and this is good for you. V'amar Rava, and the great sage Rava says, what's the meaning of the verse? Mavis v'chayim b'yad loshen. That life and death is in the hands of the tongue, that the tongue has the power of life and death. It means a person who seeks death can achieve it through their tongue. Right? In other words, speaking about things that cause spiritual distraction, and speaking just for the sake of speaking often leads to this, can cause a person, for sure, spiritual damage, even possibly death, God forbid, but certainly can even bring a person to physical. People just say too much, give too much information, that leads to problems. So a person should speak, but they should think. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, I read in a sefer that on this pasuk about life and death, it is depending on the tongue. that there's a marshal of a king who had a jester that had committed a crime against him. But the king said, since you've always been a good jester, I'll let you choose your method of death. And so the jester said, I will take death by old age.
Works. That works. Yes, David.
I have the book Hasidic Masters by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan.
Yeah.
And he has his teachings from all the different major Hasidic masters, not all of them, but a lot of them. So he has a section here on Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk. And the actual quote is, all that is thought should not be said, all that is said should not be written, and all that is written should not be printed.
Okay.
I don't know if there's more to it, but that's the quote from
Really?
page 127
Okay.
of
That's
his Sefer.
he normally finds original sources. So if it's written,
It's
and
written from Emes
yeah.
V'Hamuna.
Yeah, well, very good. Someone that said could be. I have it ever so long. I have to check it now.
Page 127.
Okay, but it's also going to say, when I was in 5th grade, that was just a few years ago, but my teacher used to tell us that at the time, maybe it still is the case, in Australia, the radio used to have a 4-second delay system. So, when they said, and now it's 11 o'clock, it was actually 4 seconds before that. And they did that so if someone said something that wasn't allowed to be aired or shouldn't be aired, they could fix it. So he said that he used to encourage us to speak with a 4-second delay system. And I was not just to say the first thing that comes into your mind is blurt out of your mouth, but to try and think, So, this is, I think, probably number 5, in a nutshell. Whatever we say, or truth is whatever we do, but in this case, what we say, is it helpful or is it hurtful? Is it going to help us, the world, the other person, or is it going to work against it? There's very little that's neutral. Okay, so Vov, number 6. The person shouldn't be like a jester or a fool, but he shouldn't be like depressed and and sad all the time. You have to be in between. You can't just be this guy who's like laughing at every single thing. When people text the message, lol means laugh out loud. So there was when it first came out, I don't know if it's a true story, but they say there was an elderly lady that she thought it meant lots of love. And she wrote a text to a friend, says, I heard about the passing of your husband, lol. When's the funeral, lol. So, that was unintentional. But if you're making a joke out of laughing at everything, it doesn't work that way. But to walk around as a sourpuss, that's not living either. So again, as we said at the beginning of the chapter, we have to have balance. We have to be in the middle somewhere. We have to have a nice balance. Sorry, we should just be happy. Generally happy with life without laughing at everything. You can be happy. Yes, there's a time to laugh and there's a time to cry, but generally we can be happy with our life. Kach Amru Zichron Levrach, and our sages of blessed memory expressed it as follows: that when a person never takes anything seriously and everything is a joke, this leads him to immorality. Because all healthy borders become a joke. Relationships, appropriateness, everything is a joke. And if it's not a joke, and if it's a joke, you don't take it seriously. This leads to immorality. Also, a person should not be when we say like a Bal Nefesh,
Greedy.
yeah, you shouldn't. Yeah, that's a good word. That's all we'll say. You shouldn't want too much. Nif halahoin, rushing after everything. Right, person shouldn't want everything there is in the world. On the other hand, he shouldn't be like lazy or depressed and not work and trying to achieve things. So you don't try and chase everything in the physical world, and you don't not try to be involved in the physical world. Ela bal ayin taiva. Rather, a person should look at things positively. And he should limit his involvement in materialism, in earning a livelihood, and it doesn't say don't do it. That's how Hashem set up the world. But you have to put a certain limit, and you should make sure that a person has time to Isaac b'Torah, to be involved in the study of Torah, and in many cases, such as, and here's an example, study of Torah is a general term for all activities of spiritual growth. And someone who limits what they're doing, they're going to be happy about it. They're going to, person should be, so that you should rejoice with what you have in this physical world. Right? So someone who I don't want to say a minimalist, that only goes to the bare minimum, but someone who doesn't get overly involved. A person who wants more and more and more, what they'll find is they get everything on their original bucket list and they still want more. It doesn't give them satisfaction. But if a person has, you understand this is, obviously I have to have room on my head, and it doesn't have to be a roof on my head. It doesn't have to be a shack. It could be something that's somewhat comfortable, and I need certain things to live a somewhat comfortable existence and to be able to do what I need to do. And if you limit at that and you feel happy with it, then this is going to help a person feel happy in life. It's not always wanting more and more. Kach Amro Zichron Levrachan, as our sages said in of blessed memory, Hakina v'taiva v'kavod. Kina is a jealousy. Everyone else has got it. I want it too. I want. They're jealous of everyone else. And taiva, materialistic desires, not goals. Taiva is not a goal. Taiva is just a desire, just for the sake of the materialism. And kavod and honor, running after honor. These three things. But simas adam mina olam, they remove the person from the world. Both literally can make a person way over ambitious and way out of proportion and get them into serious consequences, God forbid. But it means it's not a life. If no matter what they've achieved, they're still jealous of others, and they still have more materialistic desires, and they still want more honor, then the person, it's a miserable existence. They're never happy. And unfortunately, I'm sure we've all met people like this. No matter what they have, they're never happy. They're always miserable. They always begrudge everyone else their success. They can't be happy for anyone else. They're not living. But and a person has to stay away from these traits, from these extremes, and of what we said. Okay. Zion number 7. And again, anyone has questions anytime, don't be shy. Number 7. Shema Yoma Adam. A person could say, just since we said that jealousy and desire and honor and the like, that's the bad way. It's a negative way to try and live your life, and it removes the person from this world. Maybe they should separate from them totally, and go to all the other extreme. I won't have any materialistic benefit. I'm not going to eat meat anymore. I'll never drink wine. Isha, I won't get married. I won't live in a normal house. I'll live in a lean-to. I'll just wear rags instead of clothes. I'll wear like sackcloth and the like, the cheapest, right? A person might think maybe that's what I'm meant to do. However, this is also negative. The other extreme is also negative. Now, obviously, there can be situations, and Hashem should bless, we should know from these situations, but there can be situations where we can afford some of these things. And there's been plenty of times in Jewish history where that's been the situation, but not willingly. Sometimes you just got to do the best. You deal with the cards you've been dealt, so to speak. But person might make the mistake and say that since jealousy and materialistic desires and honor is something that's negative, so I'll walk around in rags and people make fun of me, then they won't make honor, or I'll act weird in public so people make fun of me. So the opposite of honor. It's not the way to do it. And not only it's negative, it's forbidden to go on this path. This is damaging as well. So let's just join us. Good afternoon, Ben. How are you?
Thank you, Rabbi. Good to see everybody.
Likewise. We're chapter 29. We're in the middle of number 7, middle of Zayin. Someone who goes in this path is called the chayta. Again, I don't want to say sinner, very Christian, he's a sinner, the whole, but he's, it's the wrong way. Not only is this the wrong way in general, we've got a precedent for in the Torah how we see this is negative. Sharik Sib and Nazir. It says about the Nazir, and that's right. So the Nazir is a person who takes a vow to limit himself from certain things, doesn't drink wine, he or she, or to have a haircut and to be able to become in contact with the deceased. And they do this because they have something they need to repair. But what do we see? Even though such a thing is, the Torah talks about it, and it might be the right thing for a person for certain people to do at certain times, but nevertheless, even the person who did it 100% for the right reason, and 100% he should have done it in his circumstance, regardless of that, he still has to atone. He has to bring a chatas, a sin offering, for lack of a better translation. He has to bring something to repair from the fact that he's separated from wine and from things in this world. But Amma Zichron of Rocha, and our sages say about him, and if this is how it works by a Nazir, who only separated himself from wine, Sarach Kapara, he needs to repair himself. He needs an atonement. He has to fix that he deprived himself of something. Now, and he did it for all the right reasons, the Nazir. Someone who's going to deprive himself, abstaining from many things. How much more so he needs to atone for that. And as we see it's a wrong thing to do. Now, obviously, there's a time and a place. Someone who's diabetic, I don't think they should be eating candies all day. They might need to abstain from something, but there's a purpose. There's a reason. Right? It's not just the person saying, no, I'm going to be holy and abstain. That's false holiness. That's not. Now, putting limitations and boundaries is not abstaining, right? Because as we just said, running after every physical desire we have is no good. So it doesn't mean a person has to fill every physical desire they have the second they have it. Person has to, there's healthy boundaries, there's a time, there's a place, and we can put limits. That's the middle of the road, right? What we're trying to avoid is the two extremes: running after everything or depriving ourselves of things. There has to be a healthy middle of the road. The fichach, therefore, our sages commanded us. What should we cut out of our lives totally? Whatever the Torah says is forbidden for us. That we can't have. And we should not make vows and oaths to make more things forbidden for us that are otherwise permitted. So we don't start creating new issues for ourselves. Similarly, our sages said, isn't it enough for you the things that the Torah said you can't do? You got to make more things that you can't do. And just to pause here, I don't want to stop the flow of the Yitzchok, but just to say again, I want to speak philosophically. You know, it's very trendy today in many circles to be vegetarian or vegan, different things. And I'm not necessarily criticizing, some I am, but I'm not necessarily criticizing everyone who's a vegan or vegetarian. You know, there's someone, you know what, they don't like eating meat. They don't like it. Doesn't appeal to them. It's not their taste. So they don't eat it. There's someone else who might say, and I'm not necessarily saying you have to say this, but I can see that point. They're going to say, you know, in the past where you raised chickens and they were healthy and you took it to the sheichet and you shechted it, you know, it's one thing. Today, the way they raise them commercially and they transport them commercially, you know, it's a cruelty to animals, and I don't want to enable that. I can see that point. I don't necessarily agree that you have to take that next step, but I can see the point. Just a side point on the side point. This is why when organizations like PETA protest at Kaporis, if they protested everywhere they transported birds like that, I'd respect them. I might not agree with you, but I can see your point of view. When you don't protest at all the major places that process chickens and you protested the Jewish things, I'm sorry, that's anti-Semitism. Okay. There are some people who say that many commercial meat today, they inject it with things, with hormones and things. You know, it's much less with the kosher meat than there is with others, and therefore they feel that they don't want to get involved in that. Again, I'm not saying you have to take that step. I'm not saying I necessarily follow the conclusion through never eat meat, but I can hear what you're saying. That I can respect the person. But a person who turns around and says that it's inherently wrong to eat meat is essentially saying, I know better than God. God said you're allowed to. And I say, sorry, God, you know what you're talking about. It's not right. And I think that attitude is not only wrong, but it's very dangerous. So this concept, Hashem has said already what's right and what's wrong, what you can have, what you can't have. Person's going to, you know, just also another. I know a person, the extreme case, his cholesterol, different things. His oh no, whatever it was, he couldn't eat salt to such an extreme that even the kosher meat being salted was dangerous for him. So therefore, his health, he couldn't eat meat. So fine. It doesn't mean he believes that meat is wrong to have. Just for him, he can't have it. Someone doesn't like it. Okay, for me, I don't like it. I like lasagna. Fine, good. But to be able to say more than what God said, I know something else shouldn't be. This is inherently, I think, a dangerous, not only wrong, it's dangerous. And the sages also forbade for us. They told us we're not allowed to make ourselves suffer through fasts more than is appropriate. So again, presuming the person is of good health, which isn't always the case, you know, people diabetes or other things, they have to really, maybe they're not allowed to fast. It depends on the situation. They need to speak to their rabbi. But presuming a person is of good health and able to, we have certain fasts throughout the year. And there might be certain other times where it becomes appropriate to fast. But more than is what the Torah tells is appropriate, this is not good for the person. They're destroying their health. As a matter, and not only that, excessive fasting is really from the Yetzer Hara. Because we all know when we fast, we have a little less energy, we're a little more grumpy, and if we're fasting more than we need to, we're going to be snapping at people. We're going to have a nap in the afternoon because instead of doing something positive, we're not going to have the same energy to invest into our whatever else we do. So the Yetzer Hara can convince the person that being spiritual by separating from materialism, but in fact, they're ruining all their spiritual growth by fasting. Yes, David.
I've had talks in the past with vegetarians, and they feel that to eat meat is cruel, to kill an animal is cruel. So I say to them, is it better that they should just die of old age? Is that how they fulfill their purpose? God put them on earth to fulfill a purpose. And that the chicken should walk around and just die of old age, how does that justify its existence?
Well, I think all people would rather get the old age than get shafted. I mean, I think that's true. I mean, I hear your point, but but as you said, this that they feel is cruel. I mean, at the end of the day, they tell the story. It's probably worth mentioning the story. I'm presuming it's just a made-up story to illustrate the point. I don't imagine it's a true story, but you never know. Life is full of some of the strangest facts you could never make up. You'd never been imagined such a situation, but it happened, So there's a story of the explorer. He goes and he comes to some island, and they treat him to a meal, and he tries the meal, and the food is very bland. And he says to them, he says to the cook, the king's cook, why don't you prepare food with onions? That's what he's talking about. So he says, I'll cook tomorrow. So he fries onions and he cooks the meat and the fried onions, and they serve it, and the king is like, wow, this is good. If you teach my people how to grow this and cook with it, I'm going to give you 10 sacks of the most precious items on the island. So he teaches them and he shows them how to grow. He stays there, and they give him 10 sacks full of diamonds and gold and jewels, and he goes back home. He's a multi-billionaire. He's set for life. So his cousin heard what happened. He says, hey, did you see any garlic on the island? He says, no. He says, all right. So he books a whole ship worth, and off he goes with a ship worth of garlic. And he introduces him to the king as the last guy's cousin, and he cooks him a meal with garlic. He says, wow, this is even better. If you teach my people how to grow this and to cook with it, I'll give you 10 sacks of most precious items on the island. So he teaches them. He spends a whole year there, and they give him 10 sacks of onions. Right? So if whatever matters to you,
garlic or onions?
well, he taught them how to grow garlic, and they gave now onions was the most precious thing. Yeah.
Oh.
They paid him in onions to teach them how to grow the garlic, right? So that instead of the jewels, the onions became. So if we let our values of what's right or what's wrong, what's important or what's precious, just blow with the winds or whatever's trendy, what is fashionable, you can have things that are of no value become your value. So one of the things that we're blessed with, and we speak about this leading up to Shavuos, we're blessed with eternal values. Hashem gave us the Torah, and Hashem told us, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. You can have very well-meaning people become the epitome of evil. They look at someone suffering, in pain, and they say to themselves, that's not a life. Let's legalize euthanasia. And then, you know what? the deaf guy, the blind guy, what kind of life can they have? Let's do them a favor. And before you know it, anyone who you feel is inferior, and it's Nazis. Right? That's very slippery slope. Once you start putting your own mind, human intellect into who should live, who shouldn't live, what's cruel, what's right, what's better for the world, what's not better for the world, then it becomes very, very dangerous. But when we have a set of values, eternal, absolute moral values, absolute set of true responsibilities and ethics, then you can't go wrong. What does Torah say about this? There's been situations as a communal rabbi where, unfortunately, I've been asked questions that the people's end of life decisions, and it's not anything you look forward to. I think not running. Oh, please let me decide. No one wants to get involved in these things if you don't have to. But when it's time, there's certain responsibility, and people whoever studied about it needs to take responsibility. But at the end of the day, because there's halachic guidelines, there's what Torah tells us. Okay, it doesn't mean a human can't be mistaken, but presuming that you're going according to what the Torah says to do, you know that you are doing the right thing. But imagine just someone just based on whatever they felt like today or tomorrow, whatever weird motion society is talking about today or tomorrow. And this is why we have young people mutilating themselves to become one of the 35 and a half genders that were invented over the last month. And you have, there's no boundaries anymore in the world. This is just flows backwards and forwards, whatever you want. And you see these things, people get interviewed. This guy identifies as a dog, and he's being interviewed, and they ask him, do you think this and this? And he says, woof, yes. It's right. There was a public school system in America that put kitty litters into the kids' bathrooms because some kids identified as animals, right? It's there's no values. So I mean, the fact that Hashem gave us Hashem said we should utilize the world. It doesn't mean we have to abuse it. We have also a mitzvah bal tashchis. We're not allowed to destroy or waste. We can't just totally destroy something, but we have a balance. We should use it, and so though I saw your hands up, it just be another minute, but it's like there's a kid's book, Fishy Friday, right? And they're fishing for fish for Shabbos, and all the fish are running to try and get caught because they want to be used for Shabbos. Now, the actual physical fish probably doesn't have the intellect to be able to make that choice. But the spiritual part of the fish, its soul, that's what it wants. Its greatest pleasure is that a Jew is going to serve it for Shabbos or some other Sudas mitzvah, a mitzvah meal, and they're going to make a blessing, and it's going to be elevated to its source. The person is doing the cow a favor. Now, as we said, a person can't be a glutton, but a person shouldn't be abstaining. There's a Zohar that talks about there was a certain person that at the end of his life, they examined his deeds. And, none of us are perfect, but this guy was even a little bit less perfect. And his positive and negative deeds came out exactly 50-50. And, well, it wasn't actually exactly 50-50. His good was 49-51. He was just in the deficit slightly. So the judge says, is there anything else or anyone else has something to add in his favor? So along comes a cow. And he says, he ate me, said of blessings before and after. And it jumped into the scale of the good deeds and it weighed it down. So one of the things I say to Rich, I tell him the story, and I say, who would you rather jump in your scale, a cow or a lettuce? You know, I'd rather the cow, but it's not just for your self benefit; it's for the cow's benefit. The cow benefits from being shechted, from being, like we said, we don't bludgeon things over the head 20 times. There's a shchita, there's a way, but at the end of the day, what's cruel and what's not cruel is decided by God, and that's it. Sorry, David, I kept speaking a long time. I have to put your hand up.
Rabbi?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Let Moshe
So I just
say.
let David go first,
No,
and
go ahead,
Moshe,
go
you
ahead.
next.
David, go
Okay.
ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
So a friend of mine who became a shaliach in the 70s, before he became from, he went to India, and he was telling me that in the streets of India, people are dying of starvation, and they have these huge palaces, and in the palaces are walking cows, and they have another palace that's made for mice and rats, and they're feeding them. They're feeding them all this grain in these palaces for rats and mice, and outside people are starving from hunger. And the same thing with the palaces for cows. People don't eat the cows, but they're starving in the streets from hunger, but they're feeding all the grain and all the food to the cows.
Right. This is what happens when, instead of God making decisions, people are coming up with, it's like, I'll use extreme example. Lot, he learned how to look after guests from Avram. But Avram was based on spirituality. It's based on what Hashem wanted. Once Lot forgot about God, instead of looking after guests being a spiritual service, but rather became something in of itself, you get to the perverse situation where he's got these strangers, and people wanted to sodomize them, which is not a very nice thing, and obviously wanted to protect them. But what does he do for these strangers? He says to them, I've got 2 daughters. They've never been with a man. I'll send you out my daughters. Just leave my guests alone. What kind of sense of priorities is that? Right? This is what happens when you take Torah out of it. You get such messed up ideals. Yeah, Moshe, you wanted to ask something.
Yes, Rabbi. I was just curious. Should a person restrain from eating too much flesh in other words, if it depending upon what kind of madrega they're on, should they restrain from eating certain amount of meat? In other words, somebody who's on a higher madrega, I heard, is more entitled to eat, different kinds of foods that are maybe more, they're more acceptable to somebody with a, palatable, appetite, so to say. But I heard
I
that
think
person, if they're not on a higher
nowadays,
madriga,
yeah,
they shouldn't fress. In other words, they shouldn't overdo it. They shouldn't indulge too much. I
yeah.
mean, they should eat meat, but they shouldn't indulge. You know what I'm saying?
So no one should fress. It's not good for you, not physically, not spiritually. But a person should eat a balanced, varied, healthy diet. That's what a person should eat. Now, different people have different metabolism and different, different blood types, and they say that has an effect on different foods that are good for them, not good for them. I can't tell you for a fact whether it's true or not, but many people feel that whatever it is, a person should have they should as we said, a person should not go to extremes. So a person shouldn't overindulge, but a person shouldn't deprive. This should be a down the middle. No, this person should eat the amounts that are good for them, and the more active they are, or again, different people, and a person should eat the right amount. They should eat the various foods. So most people, what they need is a balance of different foods, and proteins from meat and fish and various things are good for most people. Certain people can have certain allergies. They can have certain different things that certain foods they have to avoid. But majority of people. So I don't think it's really so much to do with the spiritual level nowadays. There was a time where people were were physically stronger, and you know, they lived longer. I mean, you might say today we live longer than 300 years ago, but that's just because we have better medicine and better standard of living and better nutrition. If many people in the world today would live the conditions that people did in the shtetl 300 years ago, you know, let's see if they would make it to adulthood full stop. God forbid, you know, but it's in today's times, I think people, without overindulging, they should have a happy, healthy, balanced diet. And I don't think they should be worried about the spirituality side of it. Spirituality side of it is not overindulging, not fressing, and obviously the person's having a balanced diet. They're doing that. So maybe, for example, they have chocolate as an example, as a dessert on Shabbos, power of chocolate, because after the Shabbos meal. But whatever it is, an ice cream. But most people are eating ice cream every day. That's overindulging. It's I think balance is the key for everything. I don't think a person should say that, and I don't believe it's true for over majority of people to say that if I don't eat meat or I don't whatever, it's going to help me become more spiritual. What it's going to do is going to weaken the person. And that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay. So, now all these things. Ben, yes.
Yeah, I have a friend. He never ate beef. Doesn't know what beef's taste is. He says as a child, he told his mother he doesn't want beef, and since then he never ate beef.
Okay, so it can be.
He eats chicken, he eats other things, but doesn't eat beef. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, as long as it's not for the wrong reasons, and let's say he's having lamb, he's having chicken, so he's getting all the nutrition. It's not because he's saying that I know better than God and saying animals and all, whatever reason it is. So, there's sometimes people can, as kids, like I have my Zayda, my Alter, my grandfather, great grandfather, they were poulterers. So my father and his brother, they grew up in the poultry, so my uncle was a little bit traumatized by seeing the shchita. So he didn't like to eat chicken. Again, it wasn't because he felt it was wrong. Just he saw too much as a kid. Let's just say, So
I used to take the chickens to the shoichet myself because we lived in a farm. Didn't bother me.
Yeah. Most people it doesn't affect them. Even it affected on or whatever. So, I think people can end up not having something.
Yeah.
Living something out of their diet and still having a healthy variety. And not doing things for the wrong reasons. It doesn't mean a person can never eat. They have to eat every single thing.
No, he's very religious. He's a very nice guy, and that never ate beef. Just
one of the things also bear in mind is, God willing, very soon we're going to rebuild the base of Mikdash, and we'll have kabbanas.
Yeah.
And some of them we have to eat.
Right.
Most of them we have to eat. Right?
Eating is not the problem. It's the shechting of them is the problem. I don't want to have to shecht it. I don't mind having a hamburger, but I don't.
Well, you don't have to shecht your own animal. It's
Well,
there's plenty of professional shechtim.
Can I hire somebody?
Professional shechtim? Yeah, sure. You don't have to shecht your own. It's
in
practice. Other than Pesach, generally speaking, the Kahanim did the shechita. There doesn't have to be a Kohen, but generally speaking, that's what happened. Pesach, when you had hundreds of thousands of offerings, so then they had to bring other shechtim, and the shechita is allowed to be done by non-Kohen. It's every step after that it has to be a Kohen.
I can't watch shechita like when they do the chickens by kaparas, and I can't watch bris milah.
Yeah, so part of it, by me, it's not that I can't watch, just I don't have an interest in watching. Some people are running to be in the front row. They want to see every detail. I have no interest. If I see, I see. If I don't see, I don't see.
I'm running to the back row.
Yeah, but I think part of that is today life is sanitized. right? Our meat comes neatly packaged in a foam thing, and you forget, then you have these kids at 10 years old, all of a sudden, you mean chicken and a chicken is the same thing? Wow. It's like all of a sudden it dawns on them. It used to be in life, everyone saw this, how life works. And I think it's healthy in a way. I think I mentioned a month or so ago, there was a PhD student in the major university here. She was a part of the student council, and she got interviewed, and she said she thinks now that we have supermarkets, we don't need farms anymore. Don't need them anymore. We get our food from the supermarkets. Close all the farms. And that's it's not an uneducated or a stupid person. It was a PhD student. So, but they're so removed. You have many young people today are so removed from what life actually is. They have no idea.
Yeah,
That's
but
also
we
how you
used
get
to
some of these
grow- we
ridiculously
used to
woke
grow the
ideas because
chicken.
just so removed from. Sorry.
We used to grow the chickens.
Yeah.
And then my mother
raised them.
Friday would give me 2 chickens and say, take it to the shaycha.
Often we had
Get a nice
chickens.
bicycle and go to the shaycha.
Yeah. Usually they were the kids' pets. So we always had a rule: never shech the kids' pets. They weren't chickens that we raised for
No,
me.
these were raised.
We took
for
eggs.
me.
Yeah. So when you raise for me, that's fine. But once the kids give them names, different things we try. Don't but it's but I think it's actually healthy for kids to realize, and they see a life cycle. And it's animals have much shorter life cycle than a human, and they get to understand things or process things on their level when they're younger. There's a lot of advantages. I'm not saying that means we should all just run out of society and go live on a farm necessarily.
It's like my mother used to buy fish for the weekend too, and she used to put
them in the bathtub, right?
Water. She would put them in water until she was ready. Then she would take it and hit it on the head, and then we ate it. So never bothered me either, That was standard. That's what you do. So
see how it works.
Your PhD friend that with the supermarket and the
well, it's not my friend, but yeah.
Oh, this reminds me of the person who said, "How can I have no money in the bank account? I still have checks."
That's it. So the guy complained to the bank. He says, you've really got to do a better job of keeping your ATM machines up to date. I went to 5 machines and everyone told me insufficient funds. Anyway, got to put more money in them. But anyway, all of these things that we said, King Solomon said, Al tid tzaddik harbe, don't try to make yourself an excessive tzaddik. Don't make, obviously we want to try and become a tzaddik, but in other words, don't make yourself self-righteous. Not overly wise. He says, why destroy yourself? In other words, when a person is trying to pretend and to be things and to do things that are unnecessary, it only causes harm. And he also said, says, literally measure well the path that your foot goes on, and you'll stay straight in the course. Right? We need to have balance, middle of the road. That's what we need to do. All right. Any other questions? So Shavuos is coming up this week.
Yeah.
Torah's given all over again. Enjoy the experience.
Thank
wonderful
you.
Yom Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you for your help.
Everybody.
Take care.
Excellent.
And to everybody, have a good Yom Tov.
Yom Tov.